listening to Cricket World Radio.
And this is Cricket World Around the World. Welcome to Cricket World Around the World. I'm John Pennington. I'm joined again by Jim White. Hello, Jim.
Hello there, John.
It's been a very busy week in the world of cricket. We've been pretty busy as well, and we'll touch upon some of the things we've been up to as well. In the course of this week's show, we're going to discuss some of the breaking news. We're going to hear from the ICC. It's been a very, very interesting week in terms of decisions made at the very top of the game, and we've got some interviews as well. But Jim, let's start off by looking back on some of the action. England-Sri Lanka series. We've had the 2020, which was a comprehensive win for Sri Lanka, followed up by a comprehensive win for England over Sri Lanka in the first one-day international. It's been a very interesting sort of start to the limited over side of things.
It has, John, and I suppose in a way you might say, if you're a little bit cynical, quite predictable, because Test series was always going to be England's. I think they had the better of all of the cricket there. Although, having said that, they got the better of it in the end, but it could have been reasonably even apart from that mad 40 minutes in Cardiff. But we knew that Sri Lanka wouldn't be as strong without Malinga and their other bowlers that didn't make it the trip.
Well, that's right, Angela Matthews.
Muralithan was the other one. I know it was all the M's. It's all the M's, isn't it?
Retired indeed. So
it is, classically.
Yes, not picked either.
That's right. So the shorter version of the game, shorter version of the game is always going to be more to their liking. I had them down to win the 2020, as I think you did as well, just because England were in a bit of a mess. I think it's all very well having the three captains and we're going to be doing this, but just haven't got it right since I think Paul Collingwood was out of the side and now not captain. I think his role in the team there, you need someone who's a bit taken away from literally the front line, be it opening batsman or opening bowler. But of course, going towards the one-day international series, England was sort of a little bit more back on track. Their obviously problems of the World Cup way behind them now, as they've managed to have some sleep, I think, and a bit of recovery. But
on the other hand, Sri Lanka were fairly confident as well, because I was lucky enough to be at a charity event on Sunday down at London, caught up with Mahalia Javadine and Kumar Sangakkara, a few others. They were pretty upbeat. Obviously, they'd just beaten England the day before, and so they weren't saying we're confident we're going to go out and win 5-0, but they were really up for the one-day series and confident they could really do themselves justice.
As long as it wasn't a late night at the hotel, John, because otherwise they might have been then tired themselves prior to the one-day international.
I can confirm they were off to their hotel rooms well in time to perform properly the next day.
No, very much. I mean, it was unfortunate that the rain came in at the Oval. It's always difficult to play under lights there, and with a bit of dew on the ground, a bit of rain, and a shortened game. I think England sort of back to being able to look at maybe backing themselves with their skills and the quality of the cricket there. Bowlers obviously more overs to bowl, get into more of a rhythm, and I think that's what helped them in that instance there. And they'll be looking to take this form through into the rest of the ODIs.
And finally, before we move on to another sort of topic, we bade farewell, we think, for the last time to Sanath Jayasuriya, 440 plus one-day internationals, back for the 2020, back for that first ODI. He's now I found it an odd one because Headingley is a ground he's excelled. Last two times he's played there, he's scored a century, and that's for the second ODI is due to play. But he's gone now, and what a fantastic player!
Absolutely, I mean, came and gone again.
20 years in international cricket, only two others have achieved that.
Yeah, I mean, interesting is it? I mean, I'm still not overly sure how the reselection came about. There appear to be a few mumblings as to how he got in, because if he's in for one, then why is he not playing in the others? I don't quite get that. And as you quite rightly say, of all the grounds to play at, Headingley would have been a good one to continue playing. And surely you play for a series as opposed to one or two games, unless he's walking around with a bucket for his sort of another collection to help his retirement.
Well, in a cricketing sense, it does make a little sense, because obviously we've got Tilakarani Dilshan just back from an injury now. He's played the first game. I think, okay, he's recovered now, so we can go back to the future, not quite, but back to looking at a new opening partnership, which will see them in good stead for the future. They've obviously got to, for the period of a couple of months, do without Upal Taranga, who of course is unavailable after failing a doping test. So whether they push somebody up the order of Javadine or Sangakkara as a short-term option to cover that, whether they think they give a go to one of the youngsters, a Chandimal perhaps, right, you're going to play for 3 months.
I think this is an issue that's been going on for a little while, and I know that speaking with a few others involved in Sri Lankan cricket, it's something, the way it's managed and how they go about selection, who's coming in, who's coming out. I wonder where the power lies, because from the outside looking in, it does seem as though players are selected, reselected, deselected, and it surely cannot make for a harmonious team. I mean, by definition, as soon as you change one person, the dynamics of the team, it's a new dynamic, and how you deal with that one person. Thinking back to the famous one with England, who met their new debutant at breakfast.
Darren Pattinson, of course.
Very years ago. Was it Headingley as well, was it?
I think it was, yes, absolutely right. And I want to talk a bit more about selection, because we're moving on now to the ICC. They've had their board meetings, their chief executives meetings, and the annual conference this week in Hong Kong. A number of huge decisions affecting the sport. We're going to have 14 teams back in the ICC World Cup. That's a decision we applaud. We're going to now have 12 teams in the next ICC World 2020s, which is a decision we think, well, not so great, because they were going to have 16, and we were very pleased about that. But also, they have said on the final day, we need to have independent governance of all cricketing bodies. That includes the ICC, it includes selection panels, and it includes, of course, boards. And we do sort of look at the likes of Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, where, for example, Sri Lanka, I can state the fact when you get the press release of the team that says the honorary sports minister has approved the following selection. So that, to me, that's not going to happen anymore.
Well, I hope he knows what he's talking about, if he's approving selection, or is he putting his own name down?
The idea is there will be no governmental interference, or maybe that's a bit of a pejorative term to use, but no governmental influence on team selection or running of the board, and for me, I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely, no, there shouldn't be. I mean, it's been going for many years. Politics and sport, shouldn't mix. Unfortunately, in a number of places they do, for all the wrong reasons. And yes, well, let's hope this is a watershed, and we can just say, look, we've got to take an opportunity to take this game forward. I'm pretty sure. Talking a few weeks ago about 2020 cricket and whether or not the Olympics were going to get the steal on cricket and on the ICC by having 20 teams or more than 20 teams in a competition, and it'll be the Olympics, because if cricket does make it, I'm sure it'll only be in 2020, if not 10-10 format. Is it short, sharp, keep it moving,
hasn't it? And of course in 2019 the ICC said, well, we're going to go back to a 10-team World Cup. Okay, 2 teams are going to qualify. Yeah. So there is an element of
this is it.
Confusion here. Yeah. They're saying,
and that's why I'm saying it's missing a trick a little bit, because for it to be a global game, the 2020 is the only one where really, I don't mind if none of the top international cricketers, for example, the Test players and ODIs, don't really play. Let's make it a spectacle, make it fun. Give people opportunity. David Warner's a classic example of someone that can. And I've always thought Graham Napier has been very unlucky to miss out in this instance. That here is a version of cricket or of the game using cricket implements that can showcase the sports of the world. You might find some stars. You play for your country, brilliant. But let's keep it away from Test and ODI cricket, and that way it can have its own little circus, go around the world. Brilliant, showcase the sport, bring people to it, and then go and learn how to play the longer version game, because ultimately people are remembered for their statistics in probably Test and ODI cricket. 2020 is just, so what?
Graham Napier, of course, has been very unlucky with injuries recently. One of the other decisions that's been made by the ICC from October, injured on the field, tough luck, batting, tough luck, not allowed a runner. I mean, I know we sort of talked about this before when it was going to go to the board. It's now been passed, tick in the box, off you go. That's going to come in October. 2 new balls per ODI, 1 from each end, 2 bouncers per over, and a few other things as well. So a lot of changes coming up. Yeah, and
again, I think partly is to look forward. I think you need to be proactive. The ICC needs to be proactive about how they go forward, developing the game. The issue with the white ball's always been a problem, because they just don't last, and until there is a solution as to how to make leather white. I mean, dyeing it obviously is obviously, but you can't really shine it. So one from either end, I'm pretty sure, is how years ago there was. I'm pretty sure it's how it used to be.
1992 World Cup was
something like that.
Not from memory.
And it's 1 ball per end. At least then the ball only has to last 25 overs effectively. So it should be in better condition. And I think as for the runner, you mentioned that Graham Napier being unlucky with injuries as well. Let's see what happens when someone's got an injury. How bad is the injury? Because you've seen a lot of them yourself. People have a runner and then they start running. Go back. You're going to have to this time, because it's bowlers can't. Bowlers have to go off and that's it. End of game for them. So batsmen, it's your choice. If you can't bat, well, if you're not fit enough and you've got cramp, particularly that's where the injuries come from, down to fitness and rehydration. Well, tough. Get on with it.
Absolutely. We're talking of toughness and getting on with it. Jim, you're at Lords this week for the Inter-Services T20. Tell us what was going on there and why that's such an important and worthwhile event.
Absolutely right. Thanks, John. The Inter-Services 2020 is the second year at Lords now. It's been previously played at Aldershot and Portsmouth. The idea was to bring together the three armed forces, the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, and the Army to play. They play a 50 over version of it, but the 2020 is the only way they get all three at the same time. And I think with the Lords, it's a fantastic opportunity to be a focal point for serving servicemen and women to support the guys that actually are playing cricket. Two of whom have been through some rehab. The charities Help for Heroes and Royal British Legion, who's their 90th year this year. They were the beneficiaries of the day, and also indirectly the soldiers. Charity as well, which also benefits from that. It's all about the rehabilitation. Some of the cricketers, of course, were actually on the field that have been through rehab. Money raised, of course, helps them to do that. Great day out. There was some very important people there, chief of staffs and air commodores and the rest of it. It really was a good day. The cricketers, unfortunately, a bit of a damp one because game 2 had to be cancelled. There was an absolute deluge. And of course, with an international coming up in a few days' time, when the hover came out, it didn't go to the wicket they were playing on. The hover went onto the one day international wicket, which was a bit confusing for all those that are playing. But no, the RAF came out on top. They were flying high, if you will. Right. They beat the Army in the third game of the day, having won their first match of the day too. So to be fair, they deserve it. Played some very good cricket, and we'll be hopefully putting up some interviews with the Air Commodore Paul Atherton and Captain Flight Lieutenant Matt Compton. So look out for that interview. You've heard it here first. The Atherton and Compton show at Lords. That's a new one. But yeah, no, cracking day. I think it was about 7,000 people turned up for that. But I think the point is to make this a real focal point for London and for all those that want to support the armed forces and obviously the charities.
Absolutely. You mentioned Atherton, Compton. We recognise that as Michael Atherton, Dennis Compton, former England international. But you did manage to catch up with another former England international on the day as well.
I did, yes, at the start of the day. Just to put it in context for you, the ball being used for the match, has been covered on Cricket World, has come from Afghanistan, and it was presented by Corporal Paul Taylor, who led the cyclists from Breeze and Norton in the morning, and there he was to receive it was Phil Tufnell. So had a few words with him, and although he's not really been involved in sort of services at all in any way, he was very kind to talk to us ahead of the game about the upcoming international cricket.
Phil, this has been your ground for many years, Middlesex and England, some great games of cricket here. I know you've enjoyed today. Inter-Services 2020, the armed forces come together for a celebration, if you like, but also to compete at cricket. And as we can see behind you here, it's a good standard of cricket.
It's a very good standard of cricket, and keenly fought as well. The boys have been right up for it. I've been having a chat to them earlier on, and they're all delighted to be here at Lords, which is a fantastic place, as you said, but just really enjoying the competition.
And the nice thing is, the armed forces here, we've got Help for Heroes and Royal British Legion, those nominated charities. These guys do such a great work abroad. We don't see too much of it, but we want to support them by coming to watch a cricket.
Of course, as you say, these fellas are putting it on the line every day, and so it's a fantastic couple of charities and worth all your support and all your money. So if you can, get down here and come and have a watch.
And what are your plans for the day?
I'm down here till about 12 o'clock, and then I'm off to the one-day international working with TMS, England, Sri Lanka, the first one, so looking forward to that.
Okay, well, just quickly on that, what are your thoughts going into the one-day international series?
Yeah, I think England are going to need to pull the socks up. Very good test side at the moment, but slightly untested in the one-day kind of stuff. Sri Lanka, very good side at the one-day, World Cup finalists. So it's going to be a tough ask, but I still think England will do well in the one-days.
There's obviously, if you like, from England's perspective, a slight glitch in the 2020. It is limited overs, and that's where Sri Lanka have already shown in fact they've got some firepower.
For sure, they just know how that form of the game works. They're very accomplished at it, very experienced at it. So England are going to have a tough job. But I just feel over the I think it's a five match series. I think we'll just come out on top.
Okay, well, in service 2020 going behind you, we've got the Air Force and the Navy playing now. The Army come in later.
Yeah.
What do you think you might be in store for in the hours that you're here today?
Well, I think it's just going to be a good standard of cricket, as you say. They're going to be going tooth and nail, you know what I mean? They really are, you know, up for the challenge, and I'm sure we're going to see some competitive and some good cricket. There's some decent players out there.
Great stuff. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Tough as always, in a pretty spicy mood, if you like, and even for him that was quite early in the morning actually. He's really enjoying his radio work and everything else that he's doing involved in cricket, and great to see him supporting that before he headed off to the Oval for a bit of a damn one, which we just spoke about earlier.
Good stuff. And one final series I just want to talk about before we move on to the ICC show. The West Indies taking on India at the moment. India performing very well to win the first test by 63 runs. The second test underway, but unfortunately again rain is coming into play. But we're almost sort of, maybe we're being a bit unfair on the West Indies, so we're almost looking at this series as it's a warm-up for India ahead of the tour of England, but they're playing a lot of young players, and that for me is fascinating to see the likes of Virat Kohli, Suresh Raina really pushing hard to stay in the team, Abhinav Mukund and Abhimanyu Mithun to play. What's been your sort of reading of this series? If India, they are too strong for the West Indies, but the West Indies fighting for all their worth.
They will be, and again, as we spoke in previous weeks on the show here about how West Indies cricket sort of ebbs and flows. Once they've lost a Test series, of course, you know, if they follow form, then they'll come good, as they tend to play with a bit more freedom. India playing some youngsters, as you just mentioned. Great to see it, really, because we know there's a depth of talent. Obviously, the involvement of the IPL, bringing on young cricketers, showcasing them to the world. Yeah, fantastic. You know, I think India will be too strong over the course of the series, but the West Indies will have their moments, and they may win in the series a test. That would be my take on it. I'm sure I'll be proved wrong, and my predictions won't be as good as they have been over the last week or two.
Well, lots of youngsters, of course, in the team, but who's the one man for the crisis who turns up when the heat's really on? That man, VVS Lakshman, 8,000 test runs. He's a wonderful player.
That's a lot, isn't it?
It's a few.
And apparently VVS stands for very, very special.
Well, it's very, very special. I think it's drawn in Vanki Purapu Venkata Sai. It's a bit of a mouthful when you say, you know, VVS Lakshman off the front foot or whatever, so I can understand why it's abbreviated. Jim, that abbreviates our time together for this week, and we're going to move on, and it's now time for the ICC show. More here on those momentous decisions taken out in Hong Kong.
A big hello and a warm welcome to everyone joining us here on this edition of the ICC Cricket World. In today's edition, the first one for the month of July, we talk to the CEO of the International Cricket Council, Mr. Haroon Lorgat. Also, we've got an exclusive interview with one of the most prolific all-rounders in the game of cricket today, Australia's Shane Watson. But as always, we continue our tradition to begin our show with the news. Here's Divya Bhagat with all the updates.
The ICC annual conference in Hong Kong came to an end on Friday. The 5-day-long affair resulted in various tweaks and changes to make the game fair, more compelling and appealing. The biggest positive came in the form of the decision review system, which for the first time was unanimously agreed upon by all members, including the BCCI. The DRS will now be mandatory in all international matches, but not without some tweaking to the technology involved. The only mandatory needs will be the infrared imaging hotspot camera along with sound feeds from the real-time replays in case of edges and close-in catches. The ball tracker technology will not be mandatory unless the two teams decide upon it in a bilateral agreement. The DRS system has been attracting more and more support, the more recent backing coming from Saurav Ganguly. The Bengal Tiger said that the technology is far more consistent now and the players will get better at using it as time progresses. A breather was given to the associate nations, who will now be part of the 2015 edition of the 50-over World Cup. Post the ICC Cricket World Cup in 2011, it was decided that the next event in Australia and New Zealand will be a 10-nation affair. The decision had met widespread criticism, with the voices growing louder in support for the associates. Keeping all perspectives in account, the World Cricket Governing Body has offered another lifeline to associates, who now are expected to raise their game and repay the faith. Meanwhile, on the administration front, after much debate, the ICC has given a 2-year deadline to all the member boards to free themselves from any political interference. The step has been taken to improve the level and make the governance fairer and not influenced. In other major decisions taken by the board, runners have been abolished from the game, and the elective batting and bowling power plays can only be taken between the 16th and the 40th over. Also, 2 new balls would be used in a one-day match instead of the ball change method post the 34th over. and England thrashed Sri Lanka in the opening game of the 5-match one-day series at the Oval. In a rain-curtailed 32-over encounter, the hosts put up 229 for the loss of 8 wickets after being put into bat. Having replaced Matt Pryor in the lineup, Craig Kieswetter proved his word top scoring with 61 off just 56 balls. Lasith Malinga was the standout Lankan bowler, picking up 3 wickets. The match was Sanath Jayasurya's last ever outing in international cricket, but there was no fairy tale finish in store. The southpaw was dismissed for 2 by Tim Bresnan, but despite that, a standing ovation at the Oval summed up a legendary career. Sri Lanka were never in the chase as man of the match James Anderson claimed 4 wickets for 18 runs as the visitors were scuttled for 121 all out in just 27 overs.
Thanks, Divya, for giving us a bit of a brief about what was discussed in the ICC annual conference. But why talk about briefs when we can get all the details, and that too from the horse's mouth? Joining us in this edition of the ICC Cricket World is the ICC CEO, Haroon Lorgat.
So we've got the Chief Executive of the ICC, Mr. Haroon Lorgat, with us at the end of a very busy week in Hong Kong. It's been a bit like a 5-day test match. What's your views at the end, Haroon, of how it's been?
Well, you're right, it's an exhausting week, and a 5-day test match analogy is quite appropriate, but it's been, in my view, very constructive. There were some significant decisions that we've come out with. Top of my mind is the issue of member boards now having to try and reshape their constitutions to meet the criteria of free elections and no interference from their government bodies. So I think that is very significant. It was very good that the annual conference unanimously adopted that. So I think the understanding or the appreciation for the need of such a clause is very good. That would ensure that we move towards best practice and that we are able to achieve high standards of governance. And
there are some other important decisions that were taken. A lot of them were seen as big ticket items before we came into this. Let's talk about the World Cup qualification and the numbers of teams that will play in the 2015 World Cup and subsequently the teams that will play in the 2012 and 2014 ICC World 2020.
No doubt, that was a sore point following the meeting in April when the board had decided to reduce the World Cup to 10 teams. We took that on board. We certainly listened to all of the arguments, and we've reverted to a 14-team World Cup in 2015 and 12 teams for the World 2020 in 2012 and 2014. So essentially we've now gone back to the previous formats that we had used in both the World Cup and the World 2020, and I think on balance people are satisfied with that, although some of the associates and affiliates are disappointed with the fact that the 2020 event is reduced to 12 teams.
But it was the affiliates and associates, of course, who were very critical in the first place of the decision to go to 10 teams for the World Cup without a qualification.
That's right. In my own view, a 10-team World Cup in the 50-over format would be the best. It would ensure good competition. But that is not without a qualification process. You cannot have, in my view, a 10-team World Cup reserved for the full members. And therefore, the only alternate at this stage was to have 4 teams qualifying for a 14-team event.
But I understand for 2019 in England, the ICC Cricket World Cup will be a 10-team event and will have qualification. That's what the Executive Board have decided, I understand.
They have essentially reconfirmed the decision that was previously made. And it's quite clear, in fact, that the top 8 in the rankings table would qualify through that process to the World Cup, and the bottom 2 on the table will play in a qualifying event with associates and affiliates to determine the final 2 places.
The associates and affiliates talk a lot about development. I mean, what are the sort of things that they can do going forward to try and improve the quality of their cricket?
I think, in my view, they've got to play more competitive cricket, and the World Cup every 4 years is not the best opportunity in which to enhance standards for them. They've got to play between the World Cups. So in some way or another, we've got to find the basis upon which they can play against full members regularly through the 3 years preceding the World Cup. And that would be one way, in my view, of enhancing their standards.
Other decisions taken this week affected the playing of the game, the decision review system, which has been extremely successful as far as the ICC are concerned. That has been adopted universally by all the test playing nations now in a certain format. What was your view of the decision taken first at CSC and then endorsed at the board meeting?
Well, in fact, I go back a step where the Cricket Committee had recommended that unanimously. It was good that CEC endorsed that recommendation, albeit with certain changes. Because there are some reservations with regard to ball tracking, and we will independently assess that. But I think it's good for the game, and I'm sure the players would be satisfied that it now would be consistently applied in all test matches and one-day cricket. The variable will be ball tracking, where members between themselves can decide whether they want to use it or not, until we have independently assessed and convinced those who are still sceptical about its accuracy.
And how quickly will that assessment take place?
I've no doubt that Dave Richardson must be already working on that. He'll want to do that as quickly as possible.
And when you look at we say we've had a busy week here in Hong Kong, but we've had an extremely busy year for the ICC as well, an extremely successful one. The ICC Cricket World Cup held in Bangladesh, India and Sri Lanka in 2011 was seen and universally acclaimed to be one of the best in history. Although we've not sat back and done nothing on 50-over cricket, we're looking at improving 50-over cricket going forward. What are the changes that are going to be made to the 50-over game to improve it?
It's true when you say that the World Cup was a universal success. Everybody was quite impressed at the way it all unfolded. And it's true also that before that, 50-over cricket was in some respects considered to be threatened. And I think it was along those lines that the Cricket Committee came up with two very smart recommendations, I must say, where they believe it would enhance the interest in the game. We always complain about the middle overs, and for that reason they've now introduced the recommendation, or rather it's now a decision that the playing conditions be changed, so that the power plays must be elected by both the fielding and batting side only between overs 16 and 40. So typically what happened in the past, where the fielding side would immediately take it from the 11th over onwards, they can't do that because they can choose it anywhere between the 16th and 40th. And similarly, the batting side left it for the last 5 or 10 overs. So that might help generate some interest during the so-called middle overs. That was the one pretty interesting change to the playing conditions. The second one is the use of 2 new balls, one from each end. We know that we kind of worked out that around about the 34th over you needed a change in balls because of the softening of the white ball. I think now it will be quite interesting to see how teams change their strategies with 2 new balls much harder through the innings.
You've mixed with a lot of the stakeholders, a lot of the delegates who are the power brokers of world cricket. Is anybody telling you now that 50-over cricket is dead?
I'm pleased to say that I've not heard that once in the whole week.
Well, I'm sure it's been. I'm sure that's been the case. We've also had some very good guests here in Hong Kong. We had Sourav Ganguly from India, the former India captain, Shane Watson, who's won the Allan Border Medal 2 years in succession in Australia for his performances, and also Clive Lloyd, who's the chairman of the ICC Cricket Committee as well. I think they brought some interesting insights into the international game. What did you think of their contribution to this week?
I must say, each one of them in their own right, very smart people. You can see the wealth of knowledge coming from their experiences. They've certainly got thoughts on the game. I think that's needless to say. And they've certainly put their thoughts across. What stands out for me, and I don't want to seem like I'm boastful on this, but they've been fairly complimentary on the things that we've been doing. They think we're on the right track. Even if you go down as far as the social responsibility programs, they're complimentary about the way we manage that, about the way we provide access to disadvantaged kids and so on. But there's no doubt, I think there's a place for such people to make contributions, because they certainly, the reason why we exist is for the players that we sit around this table, and their insights are extremely helpful.
And you talk about the right track that the ICC's on. This week we've launched the strategic plan for 2011 to 15 to build a bigger and better global game. What are your impressions of that strategic plan?
Well, I'm pleased to hear what would almost be an independent endorsement from Sir Ronnie Flanagan when he kind of assessed that in his previous job he used to do assessments on strategic plans and strategic management, and he felt that through the fact that we had consulted widely for more than 2 years, taken on board all of the inputs from a very, very diverse and comprehensive group of stakeholders. We've synthesized all of that and we've come up with a plan that I certainly have heard not a single voice suggest that it's not a good plan. So I'm excited now there's endorsement, and in fact what impresses me even more is the speed at which the board has moved. It's already actioned the governance review, the independent governance review. There's talk of several of the other key initiatives that we got in the plan to get moving on them. Even the evaluation of Olympic participation, for example, people are asking me, when are we going to start with that? So it seems like there is wide acceptance and adoption of that plan.
So at the end of a busy week, what are your reflections, and what do you think? Is the game stronger at the end of this week? Are you happy with where we've got to this week? What are your views at the end of a week in Hong Kong?
Firstly, I'm pleased it is the end of the week. And then I'm very, very satisfied at the constructive debates we've had. There were some difficult issues to deal with, and I think we dealt with them extremely well. There's lots that's been achieved in my view. And without doubt, I believe the game is extremely well positioned to take advantage of good growth.
Arun Logat, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lots of amendments proposed, lots of them will be implemented shortly. All the efforts being taken to make cricket more and more compelling and more entertaining. But there isn't a shortage of reasons already for the game to be a must-watch, and every penny worth it. Cricketers like Shane Watson make it as entertaining as it can be, both with the bat and with the ball. Watson conducted a coaching clinic in Hong Kong on the sidelines of the ICC annual conference with former India captain Sourav Ganguly. Here he is in an exclusive conversation with ICC Cricket World.
It's an honor to have with us Shane Watson. Shane, what have you learnt about international cricket as a result of coming to the annual conference, particularly in relation to associate and affiliate cricket and the efforts to play the game around the globe?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that stood out for me the most, has been the getting a really good perspective on the associate countries and how they're trying to continue to promote the game. And there's no doubt that for the associate teams, a lot of them, or countries, it's a huge battle, because a lot of the time cricket's not a traditional sport in their country, so it's very hard to break through. So the continual promotion by all of the successful international players, as well as the successful international countries as well, to help promote associate countries, is absolutely vital to be able to continue the growth of cricket around the world. And it's really opened up my eyes to be able to know that the impact that I could have as an individual, but also the Australian team could have as a team, to be able to continue the promotion of the game.
And the prospect of playing cricket in China one day, what would that be like?
It'd be pretty amazing, I think, if we're able to get it into the Chinese psyche, that and embrace the game of cricket that we all love so dearly. Would be pretty amazing to be able to have well over 1 billion people watching the game, and there's no doubt India and China, to be able to see those countries going together, if China were able to produce a competitive team, would be pretty amazing for the marketers as well. They'd be loving the opportunity to see what the TV rights and everything would be as well. So it's a very interesting and exciting prospect to be able to try and break into the Chinese market, but it's going to be very difficult because cricket's not a traditional sport there.
You don a role as a Room to Read ambassador. What's that added to you as a person in terms of experiences in the last 6 months?
It's made me continue to realise how lucky I've been in my life to have the opportunities that I have through, from when I was born, really, and to be able to see young kids and young people who don't really have the same opportunities that I've had. It's really made me very passionate about trying to help promote literacy and reading, because without that, you got less chance of being able to achieve your dreams in life, whatever they are. So it's been amazing to be able to see the people that we've been able to reach, the young kids that we've been able to reach, well over 20,000 people, giving them an opportunity to be able to learn how to read and provide an education through reading. So it's very exciting to be able to see the growth that we're able to see already.
And a big year ahead in terms of Test cricket for Australia. What are your thoughts ahead of the fascinating series against Sri Lanka, South Africa, New Zealand and India, and all in a span of just 6 months?
Yeah, we've got a big 6 months coming up in Test cricket to really see, just continue to see where we're at as a cricketing nation, really, not just in one days, but Test cricket as well. So we're going to get a pretty big examination playing Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka, playing South Africa in South Africa, and then especially the big series in our summer will be the Indian series of 4 tests starting on Boxing Day. So hopefully we over these last 3 or 4 months that we've had off, we've been able to really sit down and work out exactly what went wrong and what's gone wrong over the previous sort of 6 months, and how we're going to get that right, because it's going to be a serious examination over the next 6 months of where our Test cricket's at, and playing the best teams in the world and playing two of those teams, South Africa and Sri Lanka, in their home countries, is going to be a huge test. So I'm really excited about the opportunities that it'll provide, but it's going to be a serious test for where we're at.
Thank you, Shane, for being on our show. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Vora, for all your time joining us here on ICC Cricket World. But it's time now for us to give you updates so as to what's been happening on the ranking chart. Here's Divya with the Reliance ICC Player Rankings.
Ruling the charts in the Reliance ICC Player Rankings in Test is the South African all-rounder Jacques Kallis with 883 points. Just 9 points away from him is the Indian maestro Sachin Tendulkar. Sri Lankan wicketkeeper Kumar Sankara is on 3rd place with 838 points. Catching up with him fast is the English duo of Jonathan Trott and the new one-day captain Alistair Cook. On number 6 is Virender Sehwag, who is looking to make a comeback in the Indian side against England. He is followed by Thilana Samarveera and West Indies lone representative in top 10 batsman Shivnarine Chanderpaul. South African AB de Villiers and Hashim Amla complete the top 10 batsmen in Tests. Just like the batsmen, it's a South African leading the table in the bowlers also. It's the pace of Dale Steyn that has kept him on the first place with 899 points. He is followed by English duo of Graeme Swann and James Anderson. At number 4 is Morne Morkel with 751 points. Indian bowling spirit Zaheer Khan is at number 5. Another left-arm paceman Mitchell Johnson is at number 6, followed by Harbhajan Singh. Shakib Al Hasan, Daniel Vittori and Chris Chemlett round up the top 10 bowlers in the Reliance ICC Player Rankings for bowlers in Tests.
Thanks, Divya, for all the updates from the Reliance ICC Player Rankings. Before we wrap up this edition of the ICC Cricket World, a couple of quick updates for all our listeners. You can join us on www.facebook.com/cricketICC and also find us on Twitter. Send us all your views, opinions and let us know what you think of this show. Our Twitter handle is @cricketICC. Hope you enjoyed this edition of the ICC Cricket World. Until we meet next week, from all of us here, thanks for listening. It's goodbye.